I never thought I'd be the one to bring down an entire police department. My name is Commander Marcus Webb, and I'm a decorated Navy SEAL with 12 years of service to this country. I've survived firefights in the mountains of Afghanistan, close quarters combat in hostile territories, and missions so classified I can't speak about them even now. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what happened in that courtroom. On a cold Tuesday morning in November, what started as a routine traffic court appearance turned into the fight of my life. And when Officer Dale Hutchins decided to kick me while I sat in handcuffs, he made the biggest mistake of his career, because what he didn't know was that I had spent the last 6 months gathering evidence against him and his corrupt squad. This is the story of how one act of brutality exposed a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of our city's justice system. The courtroom was packed that morning. I sat quietly in the third row, dressed in my service uniform, dress blues with ribbons earned through blood and sacrifice. I wasn't there to cause trouble. I was there to contest a bogus speeding ticket, one of several I'd received over the past 6 months from the same police precinct. Each ticket was questionable. Each one felt targeted. But I'm a patient man. The military taught me that. So I gathered my evidence, documented every interaction, and prepared to present my case with the same precision I'd use planning a mission. Officer Dale Hutchins sat across the aisle, his thick arms crossed over his chest, his eyes locked on me with unconcealed contempt. I'd seen men like him before, bullies who hid behind badges, who confused authority with power, who believed the uniform gave them the right to demean anyone they considered beneath them. He whispered something to his partner, Officer Rick Carver, and they both smirked. I kept my expression neutral, my hands folded on my lap, my breathing steady. The bailiff called my name, Commander Marcus Webb. I stood, shoulders square, and walked toward the front of the courtroom. The judge, a gray-haired woman named Judith Brennan, looked up from her papers with mild interest. She had a reputation for fairness, which was the only reason I had any hope for a just outcome. Commander Webb, she said, adjusting her glasses, you're here to contest a citation for excessive speed on Route 47 issued by Officer Hutchins. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. And you have evidence to present? I do, Your Honor. Dashcam footage from my vehicle, GPS data showing my actual speed, and maintenance records from the speed detection equipment used by Officer Hutchins. On the day in question, the equipment was due for calibration 2 months before my citation, and according to departmental records I obtained through a Freedom of Information request, it was never serviced. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Officer Hutchins' smirk vanished. His jaw tightened, and I saw his hands ball into fists. Judge Brennan raised an eyebrow and gestured for me to approach the bench with my evidence. Your Honor, Hutchins interrupted, standing abruptly. This is ridiculous. The defendant is trying to discredit law enforcement with fabricated Officer Hutchins. The judge said sharply, you'll have your opportunity to respond. Please sit down. He didn't sit. Instead, he took a step toward me, his face flushed with anger. The bailiff moved to intervene, but Hutchins raised his hand. I'm fine, he muttered, though his eyes told a different story. He glared at me with such intensity that I knew this wasn't just about a traffic ticket anymore. This was personal. What Officer Hutchins didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been investigating him and his squad for months. It started innocently enough. 6 months earlier, I was driving home from the base when Hutchins pulled me over. No reason given at first. He approached my window with his hand on his weapon, demanded my license and registration, then claimed I was going 70 in a 45. I wasn't. My GPS showed I was going 42. But I didn't argue. I took the ticket, planning to contest it later. Then it happened again. 2 weeks later, same officer, different road, another speeding ticket. Then again, and again. 5 tickets in 3 months, all from Hutchins or his partner Carver. All on roads I traveled regularly, all with speeds that didn't match my vehicle's data. I started documenting everything. I installed a dash cam. I kept detailed logs of my routes, speeds, and times. I filed FOIA requests for departmental records, maintenance logs, and officer complaint histories. What I found was disturbing. Officer Dale Hutchins had been named in 17 complaints over the past 4 years. Excessive force, racial profiling, harassment, evidence tampering. Yet every complaint had been dismissed or settled quietly. His partner, Rick Carver, had a similar record. Together, they were part of a specialized traffic enforcement unit that seemed to target minority drivers in affluent neighborhoods, people Who looked out of place in their sports, cars or new SUVs, but the tickets were just the surface. Digging deeper, I discovered a pattern of arrests that didn't lead to convictions, seized property that disappeared from evidence rooms, and civil asset forfeitures that enriched the department's budget while destroying lives. Hutchins and his squad weren't just corrupt cops. They were running a systematic operation to harass, intimidate, and financially drain citizens who fit a certain profile, and I fit that profile perfectly. A successful black man in a Tesla, living in a neighborhood they considered theirs, refusing to be intimidated by their badges and threats. The lie Hutchins told that day in court was simple. I was a reckless driver who thought my military service put me above the law. He painted me as arrogant, confrontational, someone who needed to be taught respect for authority. He claimed I had been belligerent during our traffic stops, that I had questioned his authority, that I represented a danger to the community. None of it was true. Every interaction had been recorded, every word documented, and I had the evidence to prove it. Judge Brennan reviewed my evidence with increasing interest. She watched the dashcam footage showing my speedometer at the time of the stop. She examined the GPS data. She studied the maintenance records showing the radar gun was unreliable. Officer Hutchins, she said slowly, can you explain why your equipment was 3 months overdue for calibration? When you issued this citation, Hutchins shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, we have dozens of devices in rotation. It's possible there was an administrative oversight, but that doesn't invalidate the citation. I have 15 years of experience judging vehicle speeds visually, and visual estimation is not sufficient for a speeding citation. Officer, you know that. Your Honor, with all due respect, the defendant is attempting to manipulate the court with cherry-picked data. He's a trained military operative. He knows how to present information in a misleading way. The judge's expression hardened. Are you suggesting Commander Webb fabricated GPS data and maintenance records from your own department? I'm suggesting he has the skills and motivation to deceive this court. That's when it happened. The first crack in Hutchins' composure. His voice rose. His gestures became more animated. And I saw something in his eyes I recognized from combat zones, the desperation of someone whose lies are catching up to them. Your Honor, I said calmly, I have 4 additional citations issued by Officer Hutchins over the past 6 months. Each one follows the same pattern. Each one was issued on roads where my GPS data contradicts his claims. And each one was issued using equipment that was either miscalibrated or improperly maintained. I'm not asking for special treatment because of my service. I'm asking for the same justice any citizen deserves, judgment based on facts, not bias. The judge nodded. I'm inclined to dismiss this citation, Commander Webb. The evidence clearly shows, Your Honor. Please. Hutchins interrupted. You can't just dismiss this because he's military. That's exactly the kind of preferential treatment that, Officer Hutchins. One more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. The evidence speaks for itself. Citation dismissed. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt the weight of what was coming, because as I gathered my documents, I noticed Hutchins whispering urgently to the prosecutor, a thin man named Gerald Sykes, who had a reputation for bending rules to protect police officers. Sykes nodded, stood, and addressed the court. Your Honor, the state has additional concerns about Commander Webb that should be addressed. Before he leaves this courtroom, my stomach tightened. This wasn't over. What concerns, Mr. Sykes? We have reason to believe Commander Webb has been conducting unauthorized surveillance of police officers, possibly violating wiretapping laws and obstructing justice. It was a lie, but it was a clever one. By framing my documentation as illegal surveillance, they were trying to flip the narrative, to make me the criminal instead of the victim. Judge Brennan looked at me. Commander Webb, have you been recording police officers without their knowledge? Your Honor, I have been documenting my own traffic stops using a dashcam, which is legal in this state. I have also filed lawful FOIA requests for public records. Everything I've done is protected by the First Amendment and state transparency laws. He's been stalking us, Hutchins interjected, following our patrol routes, taking photographs, harassing our families. That's a lie, I said, my voice still calm, but firm. I have never followed Officer Hutchins, photographed him outside of traffic stops, or contacted his family. These are desperate accusations from someone who knows his misconduct is being exposed. The courtroom erupted. Spectators murmured. The prosecutor objected. Hutchins lunged forward, pointing at me with fury in his eyes. You think you're better than us because you're military? You think that uniform makes you untouchable. You're just another. He caught himself, but not before the word he almost said hung in the air like poison. Everyone in that courtroom knew what he had stopped himself from saying. Everyone felt the hatred radiating from him. Judge Brennan slammed her gavel. Order. Officer Hutchins approached the bench. Now, Hutchins approached the bench, his face still flushed with rage. The judge spoke to him in a low voice, but her expression was severe. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I saw Hutchins' shoulders tense, saw his jaw working as he ground his teeth when he returned to his seat. The prosecutor made another attempt. Your Honor, given the hostility Commander Webb has shown toward law enforcement, we request that he be held pending investigation of his activities. On what grounds? The judge asked incredulously. Obstruction of justice, Your Honor. He has systematically attempted to undermine Officer Hutchins' credibility. Through evidence, I interrupted. Through documentation. Through the same constitutional rights afforded to every citizen. The judge agreed. Mr. Sykes, unless you have actual evidence of criminal activity, I'm not detaining anyone. This hearing is concluded. But as I turned to leave, Officer Hutchins made his move. He stepped into my path, his chest puffed out, his eyes challenging me. You made a big mistake coming after me, Commander, he said quietly, so only I could hear. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Step aside, officer, or what? You gonna assault a police officer in open court? Go ahead. Give me a reason. The bailiff approached. Officer Hutchins, step back. Hutchins didn't move. For a long moment, we stood face to face, and I saw in his eyes the same dangerous pride I'd seen in enemy combatants. Who would rather die than surrender? He wanted me to react, to give him justification for violence. I didn't take the bait. Excuse me, I said politely and stepped around him. That's when his partner, Carver, moved to block the exit. Not so fast, Commander. We need to verify some information before you leave. The judge dismissed the case. I said, I'm free to go. We have questions about your vehicle registration. My vehicle registration is current and displayed properly. We need to verify that. I understood what was happening. They were trying to provoke me, to create a situation they could control. I pulled out my phone and started recording. I'm documenting this interaction for my protection. I said clearly, Officers, am I being detained? Put the phone away. Hutchins growled. I have the right to record this encounter. Am I being detained? The bailiff intervened. Officers, the commander is free to go. If you have additional business with him, conduct it outside this courtroom. Hutchins' face went purple with rage, but he stepped aside. I walked past them, my heart pounding but my expression calm, and exited into the courthouse hallway. I should have gone straight to my car. I should have driven away, but I needed to use the restroom, and I made the mistake of thinking I was safe in a public courthouse. The courthouse restroom was empty when I entered. I was washing my hands when the door slammed open and Hutchins stormed in, followed by Carver. They positioned themselves between me and the exit. You think you're clever, Hutchins said, his voice echoing off the tile walls. You think your little videos and documents make you untouchable? I think the law protects citizens from harassment, I replied evenly. I think you're upset because your misconduct is being exposed. Misconduct? He laughed bitterly. You have no idea what real misconduct looks like. You've been playing soldier in the desert while we've been keeping real communities safe. Safe? You've been targeting innocent people, manufacturing citations, and abusing your authority. We maintain order. We keep people like you in line. There it was. The mask finally off. The racism, the corruption, the absolute certainty that he was above the law. I pulled out my phone again. Hutchins slapped it out of my hand, sending it skittering across the floor. No cameras now. Commander, no witnesses. Just you and us. Carver locked the restroom door. My training kicked in. I assessed the situation tactically to opponents, confined space, weapons on their hips, backup likely nearby. But I also knew something they didn't. I had a backup recording device. A small camera built into my watch, already streaming to cloud storage. You're making a serious mistake, I said calmly. The mistake is yours, Hutchins replied. You should have paid your tickets and kept your mouth shut. But you had to be a hero. You had to challenge us. Now you're going to learn what happens to people who disrespect the badge. He moved toward me, and I prepared to defend myself. But before things could escalate further, the door handle rattled. Someone was trying to get in. Occupied. Carver shouted, This is Judge Brennan's bailiff. Open this door immediately. Hutchins hesitated. He knew he couldn't assault me with a witness outside. He pointed at me with one thick finger. This isn't over. We know where you live. We know your routines. And eventually, you'll slip up. Everyone does. Carver unlocked the door. The bailiff entered, took in the scene my phone on the floor. The two officers blocking my path, and his expression darkened. Is there a problem here? No problem, Hutchins said with a fake smile. Just having a conversation with the commander about community relations. Then I suggest you have that conversation elsewhere. Commander Webb, are you all right? I'm fine, thank you. I retrieved my phone and left the restroom, the bailiff escorting me. As we walked, I said quietly, everything that just happened was recorded. I'll be filing a formal complaint. He nodded. I'll include my observations in my report. And Commander, be careful. Those that have friends in this building. That afternoon, I sat in my home office reviewing the footage from my watch camera. The audio was clear. Hutchins' threats were unmistakable. His admission that they targeted people like me was explicit. This was the evidence I needed. But I knew I couldn't just turn it over to the local police department. They would bury it, destroy it, or use it to retaliate against me. I needed a different approach. I contacted an investigative journalist named Sarah Chen who had been covering police corruption for the regional newspaper. We met at a coffee shop downtown, and I showed her everything, the traffic citations, the maintenance records, the footage from the courthouse, the recordings of Hutchins' threats. Her eyes widened as she reviewed the material. This is explosive. Do you understand what you're sitting on? This isn't just about traffic tickets. This is systematic civil rights violations, possible racketeering, conspiracy. I know. That's why I need you to help me get this in front of people who can do something about it. Federal authorities, the FBI's Civil Rights Division. You're sure you want to go this route? Once this goes public, there's no going back. They'll come after you with everything they have. They're already coming after me. At least this way, there will be accountability. Sarah spent the next week verifying my evidence, interviewing other victims of Hutchins' squad, and building a comprehensive story. She discovered that over the past 5 years, Hutchins and his unit had issued more than 2,000 citations in minority neighborhoods, compared to fewer than 200 in predominantly white areas with similar traffic patterns. She found a dozen cases where seized property had disappeared. She uncovered settlements paid to victims who had been beaten or falsely arrested. The pattern was undeniable, but before Sarah could publish her story, something happened that changed everything. I was driving home from the base one evening when I noticed a patrol car following me. It was Hutchins. He stayed 3 car lengths back, matching my speed, making no attempt to hide his presence. I kept driving normally, my dash cam recording everything, my watch camera active. When I pulled into my driveway, he pulled up behind me, blocking my car. Carver was with him. They both got out, hands on their weapons. Step out of the vehicle, Hutchins ordered. Why am I being stopped? Suspicion of DUI. Step out of the vehicle. Now, I complied, hands visible, movements slow and deliberate. I haven't been drinking. I'm happy to submit to a breathalyzer test. We need to search your vehicle. For what? Contraband. We have reason to believe you're transporting illegal materials. You have no probable cause. I don't consent to a search. Hutchins smiled coldly. We don't need your consent. Carver, call it in. Tell them we have a suspected DUI with a combative suspect. This is harassment, I said, keeping my voice level. Everything you're doing is being recorded and will be submitted to federal authorities. Federal authorities? Hutchins laughed. You think the FBI cares about a traffic stop? You really are delusional. While Carver spoke into his radio, Hutchins circled my vehicle, looking for any excuse to escalate. He peered into my windows, checked my plates, and then suddenly straightened. I smell marijuana coming from this vehicle. That's probable cause. There's no marijuana in my vehicle. I'm a military officer subject to random drug testing. This is a false pretense. We'll let the judge decide that. You're under arrest for DUI and suspicion of drug possession. I'm not intoxicated and you know it. He pulled out his handcuffs. Turn around. Hands behind your back. I had a choice in that moment. I could resist, knowing I was right, knowing this was an illegal arrest designed to intimidate me. Or I could comply, trusting that the truth would eventually prevail. I chose compliance. I turned around and allowed Hutchins to cuff me, even as every instinct screamed at me to fight back. The metal bit into my wrists. He tightened them more than necessary, making me wince. Not so tough now, are you, Commander? He whispered in my ear. All that special forces training, you're just another perp in cuffs. They put me in the back of the patrol car and drove me to the police station, not the courthouse. I knew what was coming tonight in holding, manufactured charges, my reputation questioned. But I also knew I had one advantage. Everything was being documented at the station. They took my belongings, including my watch. But they didn't know about the remote backup. The footage already uploaded to secure servers. The automatic alerts sent to Sarah Chen and my attorney. They put me in an interrogation room and left me there for 3 hours. Standard intimidation tactic. When Hutchins finally entered, he was alone. Here's how this is going to go, he said, sitting across from me. You're going to withdraw your complaints against me and my squad. You're going to publicly apologize for making false accusations. And you're going to leave the city and never come back. Or what? Or we find drugs in your car. Or you resist arrest and get injured. Or maybe we discover you've been making threats against police officers and need to be evaluated for mental health issues. There are a dozen ways this ends badly for you, Commander. But there's one way it ends well: you disappear. I looked him in the eyes. I'm a Navy SEAL. I've been tortured by enemy combatants. I've endured interrogations that would break most people. Do you really think threatening me is going to work? His smile faltered. Here's what's actually going to happen, I continued. In about 20 minutes, my attorney is going to arrive with a federal marshal. They're going to have copies of every recording from today, every piece of evidence I've gathered on you, and a warrant for your arrest on civil rights violations. You're done, Hutchins. Your career, your freedom, your power, it's all over. You're bluffing, am I? Check your phone. I think your captain has been trying to reach you. His hand went to his phone. I saw his face go pale as he read the messages. The door burst open. Captain Morrison, the precinct commander, entered with 3 internal affairs investigators and 2 FBI agents. Officer Hutchins, Morrison said, his voice tight with anger. You're suspended immediately. Hand over your badge and weapon. What? We've been briefed by federal authorities. There's an investigation into systematic civil rights violations by your unit. You're ordered to cooperate fully or face obstruction charges. One of the FBI agents, a woman named Agent Rodriguez, turned to me. Commander Webb, you're free to go. We apologize for this unlawful detention. Your attorney is waiting outside. Hutchins stood frozen, his world collapsing around him. But he wasn't done yet. As I stood to leave, he moved suddenly, violently. Before anyone could react, he kicked me hard in the ribs, sending me stumbling against the wall. That's for destroying my life, you. He didn't finish. The other officers tackled him, forced him to the ground, and cuffed him as he screamed obscenities. I straightened, catching my breath, my ribs throbbing. Agent Rodriguez steadied me. Are you all right? Do you need medical attention? I'm fine, I said, though pain radiated through my side. Make sure that was recorded, every second, she confirmed, including his assault on you in front of witnesses. That's felony assault on top of everything else. The trial took 6 months. During that time, Sarah Chen's investigative series won a National Journalism Award. The FBI's investigation expanded to include the entire Traffic Enforcement Division, the prosecutors who had covered for them, and the judges who had looked the other way. 12 officers were indicted. 4 prosecutors lost their licenses. 2 judges resigned. Officer Dale Hutchins faced 18 charges: civil rights violations, assault, false imprisonment, evidence tampering, conspiracy, and a host of others. His partner Carver turned state's evidence, testifying about years of systematic corruption. The courtroom was packed on the day of Hutchins' sentencing. I sat in the front row, my ribs fully healed, my uniform pressed and crisp. Hutchins refused to look at me. Judge Brennan, now presiding over the criminal case after being specially appointed, read the verdict. Officer Hutchins, you were entrusted with protecting the citizens of this community. Instead, you betrayed their trust in the most egregious ways possible. You targeted innocent people based on race. You fabricated evidence. You abused your authority. And when confronted with the truth, you responded with violence. She sentenced him to 12 years in federal prison, with additional civil penalties that would bankrupt him. As the bailiffs led him away, Hutchins finally looked at me. There was no more arrogance in his eyes, no more hatred, just the hollow recognition of a man who had destroyed himself outside the courthouse. Reporters surrounded me. Sarah Chen was there, microphone in hand. Commander Webb, How does it feel to have justice? I thought about that question. Justice isn't about revenge or vindication. It's about accountability. It's about ensuring that no one else has to endure what I and so many others endured. Today is important, but the real work is rebuilding trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve. What's next for you? I'm working with the Department of Justice on police reform initiatives. I'm helping train officers on constitutional rights and de-escalation. And I'm sharing my story to show that standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult, is worth it. Any message for others facing similar situations? Document everything. Know your rights. Don't be intimidated. And remember that the system may be slow, but it can work when good people demand accountability. 6 months after Hutchins' sentencing, I stood in the same courthouse, but this time for a very different ceremony. The city council was presenting awards to citizens who had contributed to police reform and community healing. I received a commendation, along with Sarah Chan and several other victims who had found the courage to come forward. But the real change wasn't in the awards. It was in the new policies implemented across the department, mandatory body cameras. That couldn't be turned off. Independent review boards for complaints, community oversight committees, and regular bias training. It was in the traffic enforcement unit being disbanded and replaced with a community policing model focused on service rather than revenue. It was in the 12 families who received settlements and apologies from the city. As I left the ceremony, a young black man approached me hesitantly. He couldn't have been more than 25. "Commander Webb, I just wanted to thank you. Hutchins pulled me over 3 times last year. I thought I was going crazy, thought maybe I was doing something wrong. Your case showed me I wasn't alone. It gave me the courage to file my own complaint." I shook his hand. "You were never alone, and you were never wrong for demanding justice." He smiled, relieved, and walked away. That night, I sat on my porch watching the sunset, thinking about the journey from that first traffic stop to this moment. I thought about every choice I'd made to document rather than retaliate, to pursue legal channels rather than violence, to trust the system even when it seemed hopeless. I thought about what my SEAL instructors had taught me, that real courage isn't about firepower or tactics. It's about standing up when it would be easier to stay silent. It's about fighting for what's right even when the odds seem impossible. And I thought about all the people who had stood with me, Sarah Chan, my attorney, the other victims, the honest officers who had been sickened by the corruption in their ranks, the federal agents who had taken my case seriously. Change is hard. Justice is slow, but both are possible when people refuse to accept injustice as inevitable. My phone buzzed. A text from Agent Rodriguez, new case in the Northern District. Similar pattern to Hutchins. Interested? I smiled and texted back, "Send me the details," because the fight wasn't over. It never really is. But every battle won makes the next one a little easier. Every corrupt officer held accountable makes every honest officer's job a little safer. Every voice raised in protest makes the next voice a little louder. I'm Commander Marcus Webb. I'm a Navy SEAL, and I learned that sometimes the most important battles aren't fought with weapons. They're fought with truth, courage, and the unwavering belief that justice, however delayed, will eventually prevail.